Newcomers get their jersey numbers and spring practice dates are here. We need to talk to Tom Vanderford to get his perspective on what's coming down the line.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for watching the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I'm your host, Steven Willis, and he is Tom Vanderford for his weekly segment on all things Ole Miss. And Tom, I'm pretty excited because a couple of days ago, the jersey numbers came out. And jersey numbers are not something that you do a Blue Label show, one of the Monday through Friday Blue shows, actual Locked On Ole Miss podcast, but it's still something that fans are interested in. And I think that jersey numbers can tell a lot to the fans about what the coaches think of the prospects that they brought in. If they're wearing number 1, they're not a scrub. If they're wearing number 84, they're probably viewed as more of a development project of those wearing single digits. It's just the nature of the beast right now. De'Zhaun Stribling, Trey Wallace, 2 wide receivers. De'Zhaun Stribling, number 1, Trey Wallace, number 2. Caleb Odom gets number 4. And Tom, this is interesting to me. In our never-ending quest for 12 personnel or 2 tight end sets, 3 players with tight end bodies that could play a significant role on this Ole Miss football team, single-digit numbers. That's interesting. Luke Haas, number 9, Daquan Wright, number 8, and Caleb Odom at number 4. I think that's an interesting thing about what they think they can do and maybe how they plan to attack this fall.
Oh, I agree. I'm excited about Stribling. I think he's going to have a chance to be our next Trey Harris. So, when you watch his film, he's got a lot going for him. Excuse me.
Yeah, Trey Wallace as well. Listen,
yeah.
The reason I know that Trey Wallace is going to be a pretty good wide receiver is because at the moment he committed to Ole Miss, and I put the video up, there was about a week and a half of Penn State fans about how he wasn't good and he couldn't get open. And all of the problems were on the wide receivers not being able to get open for Drew Allar. It was like a broken record, everybody talking about that. Even though last season was completely different wide receivers that could not get open for Drew Allar. Before then, there was probably receivers that couldn't get open for Drew Allar. This year, they couldn't get open for Drew Allar. Basically, at some point, it's a Drew Allar problem, and Trey Wallace, it sounds like, got out of town just in time.
Oh, I don't blame him at all. I mean, he had 700 plus yards with Drew Allar, who checked to the tight end constantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they had a bunch of tight end screens and short passes and all of that. Listen, Drew Allar, I realize that people like to make comps of players based on, I don't know, similarities or whatever, what they look like and everything. You don't usually see people making comps from a white quarterback to a black quarterback and stuff like that. They try to put everybody in a little box. But the reality is, Drew Allar, the quarterback that I see most in Drew Allar is Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And look how he's turned out.
Yeah, it's one of those things that he got drafted 5th in the NFL draft. He's going to get an NFL GM fired. Whoever takes Drew Allar is going to get the GM fired.
I agree.
But Penn State fans are going to say that Trey Wallace was entirely the problem. And now that he's gone, Penn State's going to be fine. They're going to be good to go.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm glad we got him. And I look forward to us using him. I think he's going to be a great asset.
Number 4 on the roster, Caleb Odom. And listen, he's another wide receiver. So technically 1, 2, and 4 are all wide receivers. Number 3 is going to be Caleb Cunningham, by the way. That was his number in high school. I guarantee you that was given to him as well. But number 4 is Caleb Odom, and he is a 230-pound wide receiver, 6'5". He's going to line up on the outside, but make no mistakes. He's got a tight end body, an Evan Ingram type frame. Ole Miss is going to figure out a way to use him and make mismatches. There's going to be times this season that I think you have 13 personnel on the field because of Caleb Odom. And you have De'Zhaun Stribling and Caleb Odom and the tight ends of Luke Haas and Daquan Wright. And Ole Miss is running as fast as they can tempo But since you have essentially 3 tight ends on the field, there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do, and the running game is going to be really good.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I don't think people realize just how much better the running game is going to be this coming season. Not just because of some key offensive line additions, but the tight ends you mentioned. And I'm excited to see Shakai Mills-Knight and Kewan Lacey. I think they're both going to be a huge addition to our backfield.
Kewan Lacey, number 5, by the way, wearing number 5. The other player that was wearing number 5, the number 5 on defense, Cam Franklin's making the change from number 14 to number 5. That's another sign that he is kind of stepping up and becoming the dude. Traylon Ray, wide receiver out of West Virginia, number 7, single-digit number. If you remember what I talk about, single-digit number, that can tell you a good bit. And surprisingly to me, Deuce Alexander, number 11, the Jordan Watkins of this class, potentially an ACC transfer coming into Ole Miss, a younger wide receiver as a sophomore. Deuce Alexander has a chance to be a technician at wide receiver. I think his dad runs a camp on route running, basically on the East Coast area. So Deuce Alexander's obviously going to be a great route runner. You have Pierce Clarkson at 12, Jalen Braxton at 11, Andrew Jones, who is one of my picks to click this year at number 12, and Kapina Gushikin, number 14. Let's see, just looking at these numbers. Prince Will Amonmielen, number 16. It's interesting. He's not in the single numbers, but at number 16 is also Winston Watkins. That tells you something there. And you have Caden Lee and TJ Banks, obviously, at 19. At the offensive line position that I'm interested in, you have, let's see, just looking at these numbers real quick for changes. Devin Harper, number 70. Those numbers ending in 0 for offensive linemen, 50, 60, and 70 are kind of like single-digit numbers for the offensive line. The fact that they gave that to Devin Harper is a big deal. Patrick Kutas, number 75. It's a divisible number, 5'5". That is pretty awesome. And players that you might be thinking as a potential pick to click that might have a little bit of development to go. Remember, Caden Lee was like number 83 his freshman year. Just because they start out here does not mean they're going to finish there. But Dylan Alford at number 84, Samari Reed at number 81, Trace Bruckler, the tight end transfer from New Mexico, at number 85, going in there with all of that. Jeffrey Rush at number 90, by the way. That's interesting to me. And let's see, Jam Brown didn't change numbers. Cam Beavers didn't necessarily change either. Andrew Maddox, number 99. Defensive lineman wearing 99. You pay attention to that as well. I mean, I feel pretty good about the way this sets up. I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I think Caleb Cunningham is going to wear number 3. Shakai Mills-Knight is likely going to be like number 6 or something like that. He's going to be a single digit potentially, but he's not listed at the moment. Those 2 players not going through spring practice, I'm wondering about acclimation moving forward into spring and into the fall.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it is really interesting stuff. Anyway, when we come back, we are going to talk about these spring practice dates, a little bit of my surgery information and things like that. And we'll talk to Tom a little bit about spring practice dates and what is going to come on in March. So stick around for that. Now, with FanDuel, you can place all your live bets. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. And there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So if you miss your opening bets in the NBA, you can check out. If you missed the tip-off, you can bet on a fourth quarter comeback, or you can bet on a player to make a big major 3-point shot, have a comeback. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine those bets into a same-game parlay. I love using this betting feature because it helps keeping every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I feel like I've never missed my chance. Plus, the app is super easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets If that first $5 bet wins, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel. It's an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's go back to Tom Vanderford with spring practice dates that Ole Miss released recently. I'm going to bring this up just to make sure I have it right. March 18th until April 19th is spring practice, and honestly, March 18th through April 17th, because April 19th is probably going to be another hot dog eating contest. So that's the way it's going to be situated. The way it is going is every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday is a spring practice date. It's 3 practices per week for 5 weeks. That is the 15 practices for Ole Miss football. The reason it's on Saturday, they're probably going to have some semblance of an open scrimmage so they can invite prospects to see exactly what's going on. And players like Tristan Keys, players like J. Raylan McCoy, players like Xavier McDonald, Deuce Geralds, players that Ole Miss are definitely in the game with, Landon Duckworth. You want them to be able to come see you practice if they can. So Ole Miss is setting up their spring practice day so at least one day is available for all those recruits to get there if they're not able to dive in on a Tuesday and Thursday. But with Ole Miss starting on March 18th, I think personally this is one of the most influential spring practices in Lane Kiffin's tenure. And I think the season hinges on exactly what gets done and what gets found out by Ole Miss.
You're exactly right. And I love the format. You only get 15 days of spreading it over 5 weeks. I like that format. It gives them time to practice and then learn, watch film, dissect things. I like the fact that it's going to take a whole month basically. And that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And like you said, the guys that are here for the spring, they're definitely going to have a leg up on the guys that don't make it till the fall.
Yeah, and last season, let's be honest, okay? I don't blame anybody for not having a spring game, okay? It doesn't mean that I want them to not have a spring game,
Right.
But I don't blame them. The reason that they do that is because of the spring transfer portal window. If that window went away right now, if it was gone to where at the end of January, the roster was basically locked in of players that could enter the portal, spring games would return. Televised games would be returned. You might have a situation to where the FCS game, like UT Martin versus Ole Miss, happens at the end of spring. Stuff like that would be possible, but the spring transfer portal window is prohibiting that, with people trying to tamper with what's going on.
Right.
Trying to get people into the portal for those 10 days.
Yeah.
So I understand them having a hot dog eating contest and a slam dunk competition and a flag football game. I get all of that. Am I going to necessarily be locked into that? No, I don't watch the Pro Bowl games. I don't watch any of these all-star festivities. Now, I will say this. We might be seeing something happening before our eyes that is interesting, because the NFL has ruined their all-star game. Major League Baseball has tried desperately to ruin their all-star game. The NBA has ruined their all-star game. The NHL did away with their all-star games and created the Four Nations hockey tournament. And that tournament just happened, and the largest rated NHL game in 30 plus years was the USA versus Canada on Thursday night at about 9.5 million people. Just to put that in perspective, I think that would have outdrawn every single NBA finals. I think it would do most of the college football regular season games. We're at the point where people don't want all-star games to be meaningless. Players want to mitigate risk and all they can. They want it to mean something. So if the NBA started doing USA versus basically a mini Olympic tournament over 2 weeks, if Baseball held their World Baseball Classic in the middle of the season for 2 weeks, I think the ratings would really pick up just like these hockey ratings did. And in college football, spring games, the only way that any semblance of spring football comes back is the end of the spring transfer portal window.
Yeah.
If that window stays there, the colleges are just going to wait until after that window and have NFL style OTAs.
Yeah.
Which that would work, but you're not going to be able to get any information because they're so secretive of what's going on. And again, the fans would lose in that situation.
Well, yeah, and just about every team in America is going to try and contact kids and offer them the moon and say, hey, look, you didn't get that many snaps in the spring game and you're down on the and I think that's the main reason why he doesn't actually have a scrimmage.
Oh, he is so scared of depth charts in the spring that last season, I'm 100% convinced, 100% that Ole Miss was not ready for Kentucky because during the spring, they basically just did 15 practices worth of individual drills with no depth chart. And in fall camp, they tried to figure out the offensive line in different positions, but they couldn't do that because they were so behind the 8 ball. And by the time they got the offensive line kind of figured out, at least for pass pro, the LSU game had already happened.
Right. Yeah, and hopefully they've learned from their lesson. I know they're worried about, other coaches tampering with our kids and all that stuff. And, I understand that. But at the same time, it's what we've been dealt with. And we're just going to, the staff's just going to have to deal with it. And like you said, I don't see any spring games while we still have the spring portal.
Yeah, the spring portal is 100% the problem of what's going on right now. And also, I will say this, okay? Whenever everything is put on the fans to make a team successful and everything works out, and then you consistently take things away from the fans to take something from them in the name of winning. Whenever they say it's like, oh, if somebody gets hurt in the spring game, might not win or something like that. Then do not be mad at the fans whenever you don't win and you don't miss expectations, because all of the little things that they could have had over the course of the year that was sacrificed in the name of winning and you did not get there. Yes, people are going to be upset by that.
Exactly. So, it's a delicate situation.
Yeah, it should. And like I said, if that spring transfer portal windows, I guarantee you would see a lot of spring football rubber band a little bit.
Yes.
So we'll see exactly how that goes. Anyway, when we come back, we will talk to Tom about which players in spring practice he wants to see and what's going on right now for spring practice for me, for Tom, and all of that stuff. So stick around. Spring practice is right around the corner and the numbers are out. All of this stuff we've been talking about spring football. Essentially, we're about a month out, or actually less than a month away from the start of spring football and less than 2 months away from me going through a pretty rough patch with my surgery, but we'll talk about that in just a second. Listen, one of the players that I'm looking forward to, obviously Austin Simmons is a free space in this because everybody wants Austin to do pretty well. But I am interested to see a defensive end. Is it Deshaun Womack? Is it Cam Franklin? Because I am rooting for Mississippi high school players to basically take over the Ole Miss defensive line this year. And a lot of that work starts right now.
Oh, I agree. I think Eccles and Jam and, Maddox is coming in and Coleman, not Coleman, I'm sorry. I think we're just going to be really, really, really good with Mississippi players on the defensive line.
Yeah, and I spoke with Deuce Geralds at the Under Armour All-American game Really, really nice kid. And whenever you started talking about Ole Miss, you could see on his facial expression him light up a little bit. That is the moment that I knew that he was really interested in Ole Miss. And I asked him, what do you want to see before you would be willing to commit to Ole Miss? Seemed like a pretty legit question to ask him. And he said he wants to see high school players play.
Yeah.
That he wants to make sure, but basically what has happened is everybody that is recruiting this prospect has talked about the portal king, right, and they're trying to use the transfer portal as a negative thing towards high school recruits. The problem is it's going to backfire on those schools that negative recruited this year, because you've got Xavion Harris, who is a Mississippi high school kid. You have Jam Brown and Will Eccles that are both Mississippi high school kids. You have Suntarine Perkins, who is a potential SEC Defensive Player of the Year that is also a Mississippi high school kid. And you have Cam Franklin potentially starting on the other side. The whole Ole Miss defensive line could be high school kids this year.
Exactly. Yeah. Mississippi high school kids. When was the last time that happened? But, Lane and our defensive staff have been playing the long game. They had to plug and play the last couple of years on defense because they had some depth issues, but they've been backfilling the defense with good high school kids, and you're seeing it now.
The crazy thing, and I understand this, I get this, and some of the people doing it are, I consider, friends. So I understand why they're doing it. But the transfer portal, they look at it and it's like, oh, this transfer portal class didn't fill holes, or this transfer portal class is problematic. And I'm like, well, that's only if you say that the high school players that have been developed and the transfer players that they got last year, that they weren't going to develop at all, and they couldn't be developed at all. And you don't know what the defensive line is going to look like. There wasn't a Walter Nolan or a Princely Amonmielen in the transfer portal this year, but Jam Brown was a freshman All-American lining up over there. Xavion Harris played a lot of football. Pretty much every time you looked on the field, it seemed like number 51 was out there. Whenever you see Suntarine Perkins, who with 2 games to go, I thought he was going to break the sack record last year. I think it's a flawed logic by people, and you always want more. You always want new. The new players are instantly going to be better than the old players, and that's just not the case all the time. And if a transfer comes in and ends up playing behind a high school player, let's say that Princewell Amonmielen comes in as a transfer, top defensive end transfer, that player that on the edge that Ole Miss signed this year, and plays behind either Cam Franklin or Suntarine Perkins. That is going to be spun by the same people as a failure, that Princewell did not work out, instead of, no, this high school player got developed. The thing that you say that Lane Kiffin's struggling with and what Randall Joyner's struggling with, Ole Miss is doing this right here. It's not anything to do with this transfer player. It's about what they already had.
Exactly. And I'm going to go out on a limb right now. It's not too tough a call, but I'm going to go out on a limb right now and say that the biggest year 2 impact defensive lineman, in my opinion, is going to be Will Eccles.
Yeah, I get that all the time. And honestly, I have conversations on our private Discord pretty consistently about who that defensive lineman is going to be, because everybody knows that Xavion Harris is a good player, but we always talk about 3 technique. And you've got a camp of people that are Will Eccles, and they should be. He's a really good football player. He is the first half of the season freshman All-American last year. Mm-hmm. And then you have Jam Brown, who was a Football Writers Association mid-season or full season freshman All-American last season. You've got one group of people for Jam Brown, one group of people for Will Eccles, and either way you want to spin it, man, it's pretty good for Ole Miss football.
Oh, yeah. Listen, I'm a Jam Brown fan. But I just there's just something about Eccles. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. I just think he's his build, I think he was just built for the 3 technique. It's like he was developed in a lab.
Yeah. Yes, it is one of those things that I'm looking forward. I think there could be a situation, honestly, just you, me, and the rest of the world listening at the moment, to where Jam Brown could end up over there with Xavion Harris.
Yep.
Because Jam Brown's 315, 320 pounds. He can play a nose.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and, we've got a Kilo Stone coming back too, that, he can move around on that defensive line. So I think we're going to be in great shape. I'm looking forward to seeing the kid from Grambling in the spring.
Andrew Jones.
Yeah, Andrew Jones. I want to see him. I just got a good feeling about him as well.
Yeah, he has the potential to be this team's Chris Paul. Yeah. But it's going to be imperative on that defensive line to soak up offensive linemen to allow him to be Chris Paul. Yep. If you can keep the line off of him, that guy's going to make plays.
I agree. He could be scary good this year.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Tom Vanderford joining us today, like he always does, to talk Ole Miss football. I'm Steven Willis. Tune in to basically spring practice ramp up coming up over the next several weeks. March Madness, both men and women's. Locked On is going to be teaming up with Amazon for a March Madness NCAA tournament bracket show that I will be a part of. We have a lot of good stuff going on. And of course, you can see every one of these videos basically all around the country through the Tegna TV stations. That's 65 stations in every media market around the country. They're doing a heck of a job of picking up our stuff. So thank you to them. But we have an app also coming in a few weeks as well. So we are continuing to grow. So, Tom, what do you got planned this week, bud?
Well, I'm just going to kind of relax, but real quick, I just want to ask everybody that's watching, listening, good vibes, good thoughts, prayers for Steven. He's got surgery coming up, and it helped me when I was going through mine, and I know you folks will step up.
Yeah. April 16th, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, while I'm recovering, will be hosted by Brian Smith. You've seen him on the channel. He does the portal. So basically, he's going to be doing some recruiting coverage while I'm out. We're also going to do some evergreen shows, which is like why I hate Arkansas or why I hate Mississippi State, which, that one could be a 2-hour episode, but we'll talk about that. And also other SEC hosts are going to be doing a show about their perspective on Ole Miss in the 2025 season. So we have a lot of content. We have a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. But the main point is to make sure that we support you during your surgery and recovery.
Yeah. And honestly, just so everybody knows, as soon as I am able to, now I might not be camera ready, but you'll probably see me on social medias. You might see those as well, to where I'm okay. This is fine. All of that stuff. So give me a follow on social media if you want updates of what's going on. I should be fine. It is my second brain surgery in 5 years, but it is what it is. But I do appreciate it, Tom, and I do appreciate the prayers and good wishes from everybody.
Yes, sir.
All right. Anyway, take care, everyone, and we will talk to you later. Hotty toddy.
Hotty toddy.